The iron ring for signatures sat on a blackwood pedestal at the center of the Hall of Antlers, and Corvus could smell the hot pitch in the torches from 20 paces away. The scent was resinous and bitter, and it laid over everything else in the chamber. Damp wool from traveling cloaks, cold iron from spearheads stacked by the door, the faint tang of old smoke trapped in rafters that had seen a century of hearings. 12 clan standards hung above the ring: wolf, hawk, boar, stag, and 8 more, cloth stirring in the winter draft that slipped under the bronze doors and licked at people's boots. On the second step of the dais, Mailer stood in war gray with his jaw set hard enough to show a twitch under his ear. His gloves were black. His cloak clasp was plain iron, not decorative silver. Magistrate Ione Thorne held a waxed tablet with the draft claim terms and read the coercive line for all to hear, never softening the words just because she disliked them. Primary authority vested in claimant, challenge barred during first cycle. Corvus took the tablet from Thorne's hand, scanned 3 lines, then scanned them again to ensure she had not mistaken the phrasing. The wax was still warm at the edges from copying. She lifted her face without bowing. "Strike line 4, she said. Her voice carried because the hall had gone so attentive that someone at the back dropped a bead and everyone heard it skitter over stone. "Replace with this," Corvus continued, speaking slowly enough for the clerk to follow. "No authority over body, den, council, or vote without spoken consent renewed at each turning moon." She held the clerk's gaze until he repeated it back. "Add, either party may refuse binding at any stage before consummation with no penalty and no sanctions in council standing." Add that entire sentence. A few elders sucked air through their teeth. One from East Salt made a low, disapproving hum. Another leaned to whisper and was shushed by her own seatmate. Rurik, 2 rows behind the elder rail, made a sharp sound in his throat like a laugh trying to wear a mask. Mailer did not move until Thorne looked at him for assent. Then he took one deliberate breath and said, "Write exactly that, no substitutions." The clerk glanced up, uncertain. "Word for word? War Alpha?" "Word for word," Maelor said. Corvus set the tablet back on the pedestal. She did not sign yet. She did not touch him. The bronze ring gleamed between them like held metal waiting for a final strike. Then the scene tore backwards 7 years. In 2039, the Hall of Antlers had smelled of damp wool and sour ale, and Corvus had stood inside the rejection circle in a plain brown shift with no crest at the shoulder because she had been ordered to remove it in the antechamber. The ring that day had been chalk, not bronze, and 3 novice stewards had spent an hour drawing perfect arcs with white stone, while elders argued over sequence and precedence. Rurik Vale wore red lacquer cuffs then, the mark of active alpha authority, and he paced the circle's edge with his hands behind his back as if lecturing initiates rather than ending a life. Elder voice called from the dais, ritual flat and formal. "State your defect." Rurik did not look at Corvus when he answered. He looked at the 12 clan witnesses and raised his right palm so they could all see the red cuff catch torchlight. "Unmateable by instability," he declared, "unfit for bond security, unfit for house continuity, unfit for claim partnership." The words landed in the hall and stayed there. Procedure allowed respondent speech. Courtesy did not require anyone to ask for it. No one did. Corvus watched the old rafters and counted pegs hammered along a beam to keep from shaking. 9, 11, 14, 14 again, where one had split and been replaced. Her right heel was half on chalk and half on stone. She made herself hold still so no one could say she had disrupted the circle. A junior steward finally said, "Respondent may answer if desired." Rurik cut in before she could open her mouth. "Response waived by prior filing." Corvus had never signed such a waiver. She swallowed and said nothing because when she looked at the elder bench, she saw the posture they had already settled into. Not listening posture, endurance posture. They wanted the ritual complete before supper. When Rurik pressed his seal into the wax strip at the tablet's foot, a courier stepped in with 6 elder seals already hanging from cords, each disc stamped and cooled. Corvus watched each one added. She noticed little details even then. One elder ring left a crescent notch at lower left. Another had a tiny crack through its outer line. The 7th seal came last. It looked right from a distance. No one held it close. They fixed the declaration to the civic ledger board for all clans to witness before sundown. Tamsin Reed, then wearing kitchen linen and carrying a basket of rye crusts, stood at the north arch where staff were supposed to keep eyes down and silent. She did not lower hers. Corvus saw her there over the shoulders of 2 hunters and held that sight as long as she could before the crowd shifted and blocked it. For 7 years, that one word followed Corvus into every room. Unmateable. After the circle, her room key was reassigned within a week. A steward she had known since childhood avoided her face while he collected it. Orders from housing clerk, he muttered. Nothing personal. Her old den ledge went to a mated pair from South Keld with a new woven curtain and a carved cradle peg by mid-month. Corvus moved to a scribe alcove off the granary stairs where mice chewed reed mats at night, and wakefulness came in short knots because grain carts rolled before dawn. In spring, when pairing oaths were read, she was given ink duty and told to stand behind the pillar with cracked plaster so she would not disturb celebrants. She copied names she had grown up with while listening to applause she was no longer meant to share. In summer, she copied birth notices for pups that would never greet her by household name because she had none now, only function. She wrote healthy, strong lungs, third of line, in careful script, while mothers from her own district looked through her as if she were a shelf. In autumn, she recorded debt disputes while men who had danced at her coming of age avoided saying her name directly. One said, "The clerk there," though she was 2 steps away and handing him the stylus. There were specific humiliations with dates, and Corvus remembered them because memory was the only ledger no one could confiscate. 2041, Frostwain 6, denied entry to the Hunt Blessing line despite carrying the charter slate. A guard blocked her shoulder with his spear shaft and would not meet her eyes. 2043, Emberfall 13, removed from a mediation bench because one merchant refused adjudication by defective stock. The mediator apologized to the merchant, not to her. 2044, Rainset 22. Archive shift reassigned after a matron complained Corvus's presence in genealogical stacks polluted hopeful pairings. The complaint was entered into record under procedural language, as if cruelty gained legitimacy when copied neatly. 2045, Deep Night 2. A widow apologized to Corvus in whispers for pulling her child away at market, then said, "You understand?" As if that made mercy. Corvus understood enough to stop expecting spontaneous decency. Tamsin appeared in those years the way steady things do. Never announced, never dramatic, never gone for long. A heel of bread left on the ledger shelf before dawn. A folded oilskin when roof leak stained Corvus's notes. A muttered warning in the kitchen corridor. Take west stairs, Rurik's at east with 2 councilmen, just in time to avoid another public cornering. Once, during flood month, Corvus found a bundle under her cot. Mended stockings. Thread matched so carefully the repair was almost invisible. Tamsin admitted it only when pressed. "Kitchen light is poor," she said. "I mend better by oven." Another winter, when the granary alcove stove failed, Tamsin smuggled a brick heated in banked coals and wrapped it in old flour sack. "For your feet," she said. "Don't argue." Tamsin remembered hunger because she had known it as a cub. She remembered slights because she kept track of who spoke, who watched, who pretended not to hear. By 2046, Corvus had taught herself to move like furniture in the hall. Useful, unremarked, always placed exactly where protocol demanded, never mistaken for someone with a claim to the center. The succession tribunal convened in the same hall of antlers under fresh antler polish and new iron braziers that smoked less than the old stone pits. Corvus entered by the scribe door at dawn, with 3 tribute tablets tied by blue cord. Her assignment was simple and narrow: record claimant statements, transfer abstracts to Civic Wax, present for Magistrate Thorne's verification before noon recess. She wore gray, no crest, ink knife at belt. Her hair was bound tighter than usual because loose strands invited comments she did not want to answer. Thorne, strict-backed, silver hair bound in a knot pinned by a bronze needle, called the chamber to order. Year 2046. Succession Tribunal, First Assembly. 12 clans present, all acknowledged. Let claimant petitions commence. Maylor Rice stood at the claimant rail in blackened steel, with a war cloak still dusted at the hem from road grit. He looked as if he had ridden through the night and come straight to judgment without stopping for sleep. His reputation had reached kitchens and guard posts in equal portions. Victories against border raiders, grain convoy protected through flood season, 3 feuding houses forced into one peace table by sunset. Ruthless when a line had to be drawn, precise when law provided the knife. Corvus did not expect him to look toward the scribe bench. He did. One glance, then away. Enough to make her fingers slip on the first tablet edge. Rurik appeared as opposition advisor, not claimant, with the same smooth tone he had always used when dressing harm in language. If succession capacity is to be tested, he told the chamber, hands spread as if offering balance, we must weigh household continuity risks. Historical declarations remain probative where relevant. Thorne nodded once. Relevant records may be submitted for inspection. A runner brought out the old declaration tablet from archive storage, wrapped in lambskin. Corvus recognized the crack at the bottom corner where wax had chipped in a rain leak year. She had patched that crack herself with warmed resin in 2044 and stared at the word unmateable long enough to memorize the shape of each cut mark. Rurik lifted the tablet with 2 hands and angled it toward the elder bench. This instrument has stood unchallenged for 7 years. Its evidentiary value is plain. Maylor raised a hand before Rurik could continue. Point of law, he said. The hall quieted on a hinge. Even the brazier pops seemed to pause. Thorne lifted her chin. State. He stepped forward, not to the center rail, but to the magistrate's side table where records were inspected. Record Purge Clause, Civic Codex Section 7, Article 4. Any declaration entered under seal irregularity is voidable upon challenge by seated War Alpha with tribunal standing. I challenge this declaration now. Murmurs rolled, then snapped off when Thorne struck her staff once. Rurik smiled thinly. Improper timing. Purge actions are separate petitions, not tribunal interruption. Thorne turned to her codex slab, an old stone-backed compilation with copper tabs worn bright at the edges from decades of use. She slid to Section 7 and read aloud in the clipped cadence of someone who trusted syllables more than faces. A challenge may be raised in any proceeding where the record is introduced to establish status, if irregularity on face is shown. Magistrate shall inspect seals in open view and record finding before witnesses. Rurik said, the statute was intended for damaged tablets. Thorne did not look up. Your interpretation is not binding. Corvus watched Thorne tip the declaration under torchlight. 6 elder seals bore the hall's customary crescent notch at lower left. The 7th had no notch. Its wax was darker, almost burgundy, and the stamp impression sat slightly off-center. From the scribe bench, the difference was visible now that she knew where to look. Maylor removed one glove and tapped the false seal with his bare index finger. This was pressed from a private signet, not elder dye. Edge serration mismatches known civic mold. Wax composition also differs. More wine resin than pine. Rurik's face changed by increments. First disdain, then calculation, then a pulse jump in his throat that everyone close could see. That is conjecture, he said, too fast. War command does not qualify one as a wax master. It qualifies me to compare forged marks used in supply fraud cases, Maelor said. 3 this year. Thorn held up the tablet for the 12 clans and rotated it slowly so each bench could inspect. Inspection confirms mismatch. Seal 7 invalid. A man from the Boar clan muttered a curse. Someone from River Seats whispered, 7 years, and stopped when her elder gripped her sleeve. Maelor spoke over the noise. I move immediate strike. Required elder seals to sustain such declaration are 5 of 7. If one is forged, authority source is tainted. Entire instrument falls. Thorn did not answer until she had called each seated elder by title and taken visible assent in order. Elder Sen? Elder Brack? Elder Orin? One by one, 5 raised their seal rings. 2 withheld and folded hands under sleeves. The count stood. 5 of 7. Motion carried, Thorn said. Declaration stricken from active civic standing. Corvus had not asked. She had not planned for this morning to contain anything but copying and silence. Air hit her lungs hard enough to hurt. The tablet that had fenced her life for 7 years was set face down on the magistrate's table with a flat slap that echoed off antlers and stone. Rurik tried to recover the room. Even if struck, reputational concerns remain and may be weighed under suitability doctrine. Thorn cut him with one syllable. No. Then to the chamber, clear and public, every word shaped for record. Rurik Vale is suspended from council voting pending fraud inquiry under Codex 8. Immediate effect. Wardens, note compliance. For the first time since 2039, the weight on Corvus's shoulders shifted. It did not vanish. It shifted enough that she noticed the difference. Proceedings resumed because tribunal schedule did not stop for personal shock. Claimants spoke. Tribute counts were read. Grain reserve percentages came and went. Corvus wrote each line on command, hands steady by discipline rather than calm. She could feel Maelor on the dais steps above her, not touching, not speaking, present like forge heat you sense without looking. At midday recess, benches scraped, and people rose in clusters of argument. Corvus carried 3 completed tablets to Thorn's side desk for countersign. Maelor descended at the same time to submit military routing notes. They met halfway on the dais steps where carved antlers cast broken shadows across his cheek. He said nothing for a long second. Neither did she. She could hear voices below, blurred by distance, and the scratch of Thorn's stylus behind them. Corvus finally managed. You had no petition from me. His answer came low and even. You should never have needed one. She held his gaze. You risked succession votes. Yes. You risked alliance terms. Yes. Without warning me. If I warned you, I made you vulnerable to accusation of collusion before the challenge was lodged. The line hit her harder than any speech in the chamber because it was practical and true. She wanted to ask why now, why here, why at this cost with rival clans waiting for weakness. Instead, she tightened her fingers on the tablet cords until blue dye marked her skin and stepped aside to pass him. Archive corridors beneath the hall held winter even in summer months. Stone walls sweated in thin lines that fed moss at floor joints. Lantern smoke lingered because vents were narrow and old. Corvus took the lower passage to carry corrected minutes to the copy vault and found Maelor waiting near the shelf of civic debt ledgers where no one stood unless they had reason. He was not armored now. Dark shirt, sleeves rolled, forearms marked with fresh map ink smudges. The shift from court steel to plain cloth made him look more dangerous, not less, because there was no ritual distance left. You avoid direct paths, he said. I avoid traps. Was this one? She set the tablets on a ledge and kept her body angled toward open space. I do not know yet. He moved one pace closer, enough that she caught iron and smoke on him, the scent of weapon oil and banked fire with a thin edge of pine tar from travel gear. His hand lifted toward her wrist, an instinct, not a command. He stopped before contact, fingers curled in air as if checking himself against an unseen line. Corvus watched that halt more carefully than any declaration. Why stop? Because you haven't given leave. Bootsteps sounded from the corridor bend before she could answer. Tamsin arrived carrying 2 sealed tablets wrapped in kitchen cloth to keep wax from cracking in the cold. For archive receipt, Tamsin said, voice neutral for anyone listening. Her body placed itself half between Corvus and the open passage without fuss. Mailer dropped his hand and took 1 tablet. You know this route well. Tamsin's mouth twitched. Delivered ledgers through these halls since I was 12. Faster than your guards on a bad day, quieter too. She looked at Corvus, not him. Thorn wants you in war map chamber. Now. She said don't stop to breathe on the way. Corvus gathered the cloth bundle. Did she? No, Tamsin said. That part is mine. As Corvus passed, Tamsin brushed her knuckles once against Corvus's wrist, brief and deliberate. The message was simple. I'm here. The war map chamber had no antlers, no ceremonial carvings, only a long oak table scored by compass points and knife nicks where messengers had stabbed pins into border cloth. Rain began while they were assembling maps, first tapping against slit windows, then a steady drumming that made voices feel smaller. Mailer dismissed 2 aides with a tilt of his head and waited until the latch fell behind them. He spread a charcoal map of river defenses but did not point to markings. I did not strike that record for Mercy Theater, he said. Corvus stood opposite, palms on wood, weight balanced like she expected impact. Then for what? For truth first, strategy second, and because I want you. No flourish, no softening, just the statement. She blinked once, then let the words settle. You have alliances hanging by twine. North March wants your line tied to theirs before thaw. West Vale wants hostages disguised as marriage guests. Claiming me after today would detonate both talks. I know. Then this is poor timing. He gave one dry breath of humor. Not poor. Expensive. He leaned on his knuckles, voice stripped clean. I examined your declaration tablet 3 nights ago when tribunal packets were opened. I saw the seal mismatch and had 2 choices. Keep quiet and let Forge Stain keep serving as leverage, or burn political capital in public to cut it out. I chose. Not because you asked, because I could not stand in a hall calling for order while using rot in the foundation. Corvus felt heat rise under her skin, not from braziers. You speak like this is civic hygiene. It is. It is also personal. She waited. When you stand at the scribe bench, you never lean unless pain catches you. Left side, lower ribs. Old injury? Her hand moved before she could stop it, pressing where a spear haft had struck years back. Training accident. I noticed in first quarter reports when you shifted during long hearings. I noticed too much where you're concerned. She stared at him as rain hammered shutters. For 7 years she had trained herself to assume men noticed only utility, defect, rank. Being observed without contempt did not fit any strategy she had prepared. You want me, she said, testing for hooks. Yes. Not as compensation for today. No. Not as symbol to prove reform. No. Not as debt. His mouth tightened. I don't trade in bodies to settle ledgers. She nodded once, still wary. If this is want, want is not enough by itself. I will not enter any bond that can be used to put me back in a corner when convenience changes. Then name terms when you're ready. He did not step around the table. He did not reach again. Outside the war room, the portico ran along the hall's east face with stone arches open to rain curtain and courtyard noise below. Corvus paused under the 4th arch, where drainage chains clinked, and watched drops strike flagstones and silver needles. Her pulse beat high in her throat, too fast, too loud. She put 2 fingers to her neck and counted against breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mailer came out behind her and stopped an arm's length away. He did not crowd the shelter. Wind shoved wet air under the arch and brought his scent again, iron and smoke, with a trace of pine resin from armor straps hung nearby. Corvus resented how sharply she catalogued those details when she should have been rebuilding defenses. "Your hand is shaking," he said. She looked down. 2 fingertips trembled against the column. "I can still hold a blade." "I'm not questioning that." Thunder rolled across the valley. In the courtyard below, stable boys dragged feed bins under cover, cursing at wheels stuck in mud. Corvus watched Maylor's profile in gray light and noticed a thin scar at his jaw hinge she had never seen from the scribe bench. Her body leaned a fraction before her mind approved it. He noticed. He did not claim distance. "I spent years making myself unreactive," she said. "Easier to survive if no one can read you. And now? Now my pulse is betraying me on stone steps in public architecture." His mouth almost curved. "No one below can hear it. I can." Silence held. Rain ran off roof lip in ropes. Corvus turned and faced him fully. "If we proceed, I choose every threshold. No assumptions. No inherited customs smuggled in as inevitability." "Understood." "You say that quickly." "I've thought about little else since first thaw." She searched his face for mockery and found none. "Do not make promises here you cannot keep in council." "Then test me in council." A bronze bell rang once for afternoon reconvening. Corvus exhaled, squared shoulders, and walked back toward the hall. Mailer matched pace, half step behind by choice as people crossed corridors around them and pretended not to stare. By evening, succession docket had narrowed to 2 viable outcomes, and every clan understood the leverage of marriage attached to either. Thorn, pragmatic as sharpened bone, scheduled elevation rite at first torch the next day to secure continuity before rumors outran law. Draft claim terms were prepared overnight by civic scribes under magistrate's seal, language stale with old hierarchies, designed to move fast and ask no one whether speed itself could be coercion. So the hall filled again under 12 standards. Corvus entered through the main doors this time, not scribe passage. Cloth whispered as people shifted to watch. Rurik stood near the rear rail with 2 wardens at either side, his red cuff gone, wrist bare and pale where lacquer had shielded sun for years. Thorn took position at center. Before witnesses of 12 clans, elevation and claim covenant to be read. She read the draft with legal clarity. At the coercive line, Corvus raised her hand. Pause. An elder clicked his tongue in irritation. Thorn did not. "State amendment request." Corvus stepped to the ring so all could hear. "This draft assumes compelled hierarchy. I reject compelled hierarchy." Rurik barked a laugh. "You reject custom because one man overturned one tablet? Delusion suits you." Thorn's staff struck stone. "Rurik, speak out of turn again and you leave under gag order." He snapped his mouth shut but smiled with too many teeth. Corvus faced the magistrate. "Insert my terms." She spoke each line slowly, making the clerk repeat after her so no word could be misheard later. Mutual consent required for every binding step. Council vote retained by each party independent of bond status. Body autonomy explicit. Household resources administered by joint sign or independent sign for pre-existing property. Dispute resolution by Magistrate Thorn, not private alpha court. Add clause that either signatory may request public review after first season. A stir ran through benches. One elder muttered, "Unprecedented." Another said, "Impossible to enforce," and was answered by her seatmate, "Everything is impossible until written." Maylor spoke before Thorn could. So was a forged seal in a rejection circle. Thorn held out the tablet to him first. Claimant accepts amendments? I do. She turned to Corvus. Respondent? Corvus lifted her chin. I accept these terms and no others. Stylus marks crossed old lines. New wax warmed in a bronze cup, stirred with a bone spatula until surface glossed. Thorn read rewritten covenant aloud from top to final clause, while Hall listened, some resentful, some curious, some stunned by the fact that a woman once publicly branded unmateable was dictating legal structure in the same room where she had been erased. When reading finished, Thorn called sanction outcomes against Rurik, voice carrying to the last bench. For submission of forged seal and abuse of declarative authority, council voting rights removed for full 5-year term, financial levy to injured party, 800 silver marks, payable in 4 equal installments under supervision of civic treasury, and entered by date. Corvus heard the amount as if through water, then clear. 800 silver marks. Not symbolic. Not apology language. Material redress named in front of 12 clans. Rurik flushed dark. Extortion. Penalty, Thorn corrected. Codex 8, fraud subsection 2. Wardens moved him toward side exit. At threshold, he twisted enough to throw one last line over shoulder. You think this makes you clean? People remember what you are? Corvus answered before wardens could drag him out. They will remember what you forged. Doors shut. Echo held, then thinned. Then came the rite itself. No flowers, no songs, just law and witness. Corvus and Mailer stood on opposite sides of bronze ring. Thorn bound their right wrists with gray cord looped twice, not tight, not decorative, and asked each in turn, Do you enter by will, aware of irreversible consequence if consummation follows? Maelor, yes. Corvus felt every eye in Hall, every old insult, every new risk. She looked at Cord, then at his face. Yes. Thorn lifted a small knife and nicked the cord ends to mark registry, then laid knife aside. Seal. They pressed seal rings into fresh wax below amended covenant. This time every imprint matched, each crest clear to edge. When cord was cut away, Corvus rubbed the faint mark on her wrist and did not hide the motion. Night dropped hard and cold after rite. Torches outside Hall guttered in crosswind, throwing brief orange over wet stone. Corvus stood in a chamber prepared for first bond consummation. Plain bed, basin of hot water, folded blankets, one candle bracket at each wall. She had insisted room B in old east wing where windows could open. Closed rooms made her chest lock. Tamsin sat outside door on an overturned grain bucket with short spear across her knees. Kitchen boots. No ceremonial mark, jaw set in practical focus. When Corvus opened the door a hand's width, Tamsin looked up. Need me in or out? Out. Close enough to hear if I call? Always. Corvus hesitated. If anyone asks, you're here by whose order? Tamsin snorted softly. Mine. Mailer entered a minute later without entourage. He closed the door but did not bolt it. First gesture, he moved sword belt to a chair by the wall and set both palms where Corvus could see them. Second gesture, window open? She nodded. He crossed, unlatched shutter, and let rain-cooled air sweep in. Candle flames bent and recovered. They stood facing each other with one pace between. No hall, no elders, no magistrate now. Just consequence and choice. Corvus spoke first because if she waited, she might lose nerve. Before anything, verbal terms in this room too, not just wax. Speak them. If I say stop, we stop. No argument. Yes. If I freeze, you step back and ask. Yes. If either of us wants delay, delay stands. No debt built from waiting. Yes. If this changes power in council against me, we reevaluate publicly, not in private pressure. Yes. She swallowed. Say what you want now. Plainly. He held her gaze and waited for her nod before moving. I want to touch you with your consent. I want to build a bond that does not require you to shrink. I want you beside me in rule and in bed. If any of that turns into pressure, tell me and I correct." Her heartbeat thudded against ribs. The room smelled of rain and cedar soap from basin steam. She stepped forward first and put her hand to scar at his jaw. Warm skin, rough edge under thumb. He exhaled slowly, like someone setting down weight he had carried too long. His fingers came to her waist only after she leaned in. Their foreheads touched. Breath mingled, rain, iron, clean wool. There was hesitation, earned and necessary. They paused at each threshold and named it. "This?" he asked, fingertips at her sleeve seam. "Yes." "Here?" At the curve of her back. "Yes." When his hand crossed old bruised memory at left ribs, Corvus stiffened. He stepped back exactly as asked, hands open, no performance apology, no wounded pride. "Do you want to stop?" he said. She took 3 breaths, eyes on his face. "Not stop. Slower." He nodded once. "Slower." Later, when she pulled him back by the wrist, he let her set pace again. Outside, Tamsin listened to wind in corridor and counted passing guard boots, so no one lingered near the door. A pair paused once at turn. She rapped spear butt twice on stone and said, "Move along." They moved. By dawn, rain had stopped. Pale light came through open window and painted floorboards with wet shine. Corvus sat on bed edge wrapped in wool blanket, hair loose down her back, and watched steam rise from 2 mugs Tamsin had left just inside at first bell. 1 black tea, 1 broth. Exactly right, without asking. Maylor stood by window fastening shirt. He turned when she said his name. "We go back to hall together," she said. "We do. Not with me behind. Beside." They walked east corridor shoulder to shoulder. Servants looked up, then looked again, recalibrating old assumptions in real time. One young page nearly dropped a basket of rushes and recovered at last second. Corvus met his startled eyes until he looked away first. In main chamber, Thorne was already on dais arranging tribunal tablets for day's final vote. She glanced at them once, took in stance and distance, and gave a small, almost invisible nod. Tamsin entered through side arch carrying a stack of morning ledgers, set them on lower bench, and took her place where she could see both door and Corvus. Third watch, still steady. When council reconvened, Thorne called roll and formalized outcomes from previous day. Rurik's seat remained empty. A warden delivered notice that he had departed city at dawn under escort, stripped of voting rights, levy schedule fixed, destination outside tribunal jurisdiction. No one toasted. No one asked after him. Corvus stood when invited to speak on covenant implementation in council practice. She did not use grand language. She named procedure. Any future claim draft submitted to this hall must include explicit consent clauses for both parties. Coercive line 4 is deprecated and removed from standard form. Magistrate review required before public reading. Archive copy must preserve amendments in full. One elder objected, "This will slow rights." Corvus answered, "Then rights can afford to slow." Thorne marked assent with stylus scratch. Recorded. Another elder said, "What if one party refuses all terms forever?" "Then no bond," Corvus replied, "and no one is owned by delay." Grumbling followed, then subsided as people recognized the line had already moved. Maylor addressed military succession and supply routes with the same hard clarity he had brought to Purge Challenge. He outlined river fort rotations, grain escort schedules, and winter levy reductions to keep border patrols fed without stripping valley stores. When North March envoy pressed a question about alliance marriage expectations, Maylor answered without flinch. Alliance will rest on grain and border defense commitments, not purchase of a woman's autonomy. 3 benches rustled. No one contradicted him directly. At midday break, Tamsin appeared at Corvus's elbow with bread, cheese, and a wrapped apple. "Eat," she said. "You negotiate sharper when not hollow." Corvus took the packet. "You're giving orders now?" "Since 2039, Tamsin said. "You just notice more today." Hours later, after votes tallied and duties assigned, the hall thinned to echoes and broom scrape. Corvus remained beside Deus as workers lowered 2 clan standards for mending. Mailer joined her at the step where they had stood in charged silence the day before. This time words came easier, less guarded. "You changed succession law in a day," he said. She looked at bronze ring, dull now with fingerprints and wax flecks. "No, I changed one clause and forced people to hear what it had been doing." "That is still change." She glanced sideways. "Why did you truly act unasked?" He rested forearm on rail, considering before speaking. "Strategically, forged authority left standing can be turned on anyone inconvenient. If I tolerated it against you, someone would use same tactic against my command within a year. Personally," he met her expression without theater, "I could not watch you be judged by a lie and still call myself fit to lead." Corvus let that settle. Not romance as excuse, not strategy as shield. Both, named plainly and paid for in public. She extended her hand. Not ceremonial, not for witnesses, just palm up between them. He took it once, firm and careful. Below them, Tamsin crossed with an empty tray and pretended not to grin. Thorne, gathering codex tabs at far table, watched the gesture and returned to work without comment. The hall smelled of cooling wax and wet wool drying in sunlight, ordinary scents after extraordinary days. Scribes packed tablets, guards rotated posts. Someone laughed near side door, quick and surprised, as if laughter had forgotten this room and found its way back. Corvus listened for the old inward brace, the one that had tightened before every public impact for 7 years. It did not arrive. When she and Maylor turned from the rail, they turned together, and no one in the chamber could mistake where she stood.